In this video, we are going to show how to add working time for on weekends and that way crash an activity. And so this is the software development projects in progress. Here's the red line is representing our status date. Our current finish date, scheduled finish date is 11/17. And as you notice, the clear diamond here, which is our actual, the baseline milestone, finish milestone, which was at 11/10. And so we'd like to bring back the finish to the baseline finish. And for that, we would like to crash this activity 40. And the option we are going to go for in this case is to allow the team to work on weekends. It's a 4-week activity, so we'll basically have 3 or 4 weekends in between. 3 weekends in between that we will allow work on by the concerned team members. And so to do that, we'll first set up a calendar which allows for weekends to be working weekends. So I'll go change working time. I'll create a new calendar and we'll call it calendar for activity 40. That's the one we are going to use it for. Okay. And so activity 40, if we notice here, it starts in October. It actually starts on October 16th, 2020 and goes for 4 weeks. So let's go to October 2020. And here we'll define working weeks. And so let's call them working weekends. And we'll select for going from the start date, 16th, and to the end date of the activity right now is, I believe, November 13th. We can just select here November 9th and then associate details with it. So I'm holding the control key to select Saturday also. So Sunday and Saturday, we are setting them to working times going from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and then from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, and so now you see it has marked that we have made these exceptions or edited working hours. And here we see that this weekend, Saturday, is also showing us the same working time as any other working day, and that continues on into November. Okay, so now we have defined it as calendar for activity 40. You see, okay. We'll go and we can attach that to the calendar right from here to the activity, but let's do that from the task usage view. So where we can see the impact pretty clearly. So we go to task usage. And so here's the task usage views for the same activity. Starting on October 16th on a Friday actually, and then running across for 4 weeks. And so what we're going to do is now allow this to work on the weekends. And so first we go and right click, get the information tab up, go to advanced and change the calendar to calendar for activity 40. And say okay. Okay, so no change happened here, and that's because even though the activity is allowed to work on that weekends, the resources are not. So we'll go to the resource sheet and allow them to work on weekends too. So resource sheet. So for the tech writer, right click here, information. Change working time. And we'll select calendar for activity 40. Okay, so they're now allowed to work on that weekend, those selected weekends, and we'll do the same thing to our assistant PM, who's the other resource involved in that. Information. Change working time. Select calendar for activity 40. Okay. Actually, we need to do one more thing here for allowing it to work at a higher cost during that time. So we'll have to do that for all of these. So it turns out actually we are not going to be using assistant PM's cost anyway, because we said his cost is involved in the overhead. That's why it's 0 and 0 here. Let's do that for the tech writer. We'll define the costs. And this is really meant for having on a long-term project, the cost having changing over time, and that's what Microsoft Project apparently has provided this for. We are going to trick the system in using this for increasing the cost on weekends. And so I'm going to select the first weekend was, if you remember, was October 17th and 18th. So we'll select starting on October 17th, and our standard rate becomes 75. Then following Monday, it goes back to 50. Then again, following weekend, we'll increase the rate again. October 23rd. Wait a minute, actually that should have been October 24th actually. On Saturday morning, we go back to 75, and then following Monday morning, we come back to our standard rate of 50. Do that for one more weekend, I believe, and we should be okay with that. October 31st at 8 a.m., 75 standard rate. And then the following Monday, we go back to standard rate of 50. Okay, so we say okay here. Now let's go back to our task usage view. And I believe we should see that our resource is working. So we'll do function F5 activity 40. And there you see that now we are working Saturdays and Sundays. It shows you the increased costs. On a weekday, the tech writer cost is 400, but on weekends, it jumps up by 50% to 600. And that it continues that way for one. This is the second weekend, third weekend, and it doesn't need to go any further. So that way we have taken out 6 calendar days. So it was finishing on November 13th, I believe, and now it's finishing on second, third, fourth, fifth, I believe. Yeah. So that way we managed to get our 6 days of reduction here. The cost, you notice, has gone up from $8,000 to $9,200. And so you might think that should have gone higher, but the difference is really the delta between the standard rate and the overtime rate. And so that's the 50% addition. So really, if you look at it, adds 200 extra for each weekend day. So that way we added 6 weekend days. So we added $1,200. So the cost became $9,200. Just for reference, let's compare this with. Actually, first let's go and look at the Gantt chart here. And so this is much shorter. Of course, you are not seeing that compression, the finish deadline move, because this is really on a path, a resource critical path. And so we will take the finish time from here, add that to the next activity, which was Control C, Control V. And so this actually brings it back even one more day than needed. So we actually could have used one less of weekend day and met our target of finishing by 11:10. So that's how you go about reducing crashing the activity by using overtime. What I was going to do was, let's compare this cost, additional cost. For activity 40, we are at 9,200. And let's compare that with a couple other options that we had to crash. And that's in our comparison sheet that we had calculated for activity 2. For using overtime, which is of course an expensive option, we get nowhere close to 6 days, and that cost us $3,600 extra. So that's definitely not a better option. Looking at the additional resource, we got about 6 days with only $600 extra, so about half the cost. So yeah, really the additional resource cost option is the better option. But just in case on a project where you do not have additional resources available, then you can use this option of having people working overtime on weekends. Of course, you would not want to have them working that long term, 3 to 4 weekends. That probably is as much as you want to do. And of course, it will depend on the particular resource and their constraints on weekends. I will stop here.